So what we're looking into today is we have selected a case study in Belvans West, and it is a greenfield development, so a typical pre-structure planning. And then it's approximately 4.4 square kilometer in size. And this is what we want to, has been part of the original project where Target has been tested. And today we want to to use that as one of the case studies. You find a step-by-step walkthrough on doc-staging. So this is, this should be part of the package that has been Stefan sent out there. I'm going to back to that later. What we want to do with that is really starting to look into the average air temperature that we get. We want to look into what is the highest temperatures that we can observe, but also how can we compare some of the different results. And this is what I would like to walk through with you today. So if let's go to that link here. So what you need to do first is you need to register as well. So this is, I'm going to bring that over here. This is the documentation, as I said before as well, with the other doc training seminars. Those are still online, and they have the videos attached to them as well. Please have a look at them. The basic functionality is still there. The user interface might have changed slightly, but that shouldn't be a major problem of how you're going to be able to access those results. Now let's look into today. So if you go onto the, just need to open up a different browser. Sorry, it's taking a while. I'm going to close PowerPoint as well. That seems to be destroying my performance. If you haven't yet, you can register under, so if you go to staging.watersensitivecities.org, if you sign up, sign inside, you can register here. So it's the same procedure, username and email. It does not link back to the, since it is a testing environment, it is not linking back to your existing account that you might have with the scenario tool. So that sits in its own separate environment. And just be cautious. We are changing those and might reset the database as well. So this is why we're not recommending to use it outside of those sessions. I'll just give you a few minutes to register if you haven't done so. Then also give you more, where's my tool, to bump up your access levels if you haven't done so. Come on. Sorry, my computer is slow today. I think the Zoom recording is always taking a bit too much. Yeah. Okay, cool. Got that. You don't need to see that. All right. Go. Okay. So I'm able to click in the toolbar. Yeah, we're back online. Let's just check here. Gayani should have more access now. Then we have Chris as well. And we have Nick as well. So bumped your access levels up. You might have to, wait a second. You might have to restart the website. Just reload it. And then you can follow it as well. So if you get a warning where it says the area is too large, that is because with the demo access you can only look at small areas. So for today, I just give you a bit more access to it. Now if you log in, okay, so in parallel I have opened up the, okay, in parallel I've also opened up the, let's organize my windows properly. Okay, so I have my help open at the same time and the scenario tool. Now all ready to go, and now we open up here the website. Now with the plus button, as we had it before, you can add a new project. Okay. Now let's see. This is PSC PSP1 that we want to look into. Again, you need to select the region. So let's just zoom in here. All right. You can also look, if you want to have a go as well, you can just try it and apply it in one of the areas that have been set up with a go as well. As I said, small things might break. Okay. If there's something that you notice that is not working, please let us know. We take that into our testing and fix those problems as soon as possible. This is also feedback on the usability and so on, and what else we would like to see is really, really important. Okay, next. You can use land surface temperature and target together, which I'm doing now, or you can also just look at target or just at the land surface temperature. This is fine. You should not see the water cycle model, or this is just some internal test version that I had here as well. Okay, next. The model is now asking you to upload data or to draw the area. Now we have uploaded, there's a Dropbox folder. If you click on that, I'll open that in the new tab. This should download the files for you. So there's a set of files in there. So this is basically, when you get a pre-structure plan in, you can have these different GIS layers where you have your different, oops, something crashed. Where you have your different, land use zones in there. So you can split those layers up, save them as GeoJSON and in the right coordinate system. So this is the typical one that GPS coordinates are saved in. And then with that, you can import all those data into the scenario tool. So I download that directly here. Okay. Now, where is that? Martin, I just gave you access as well. That you have more access to the tool in case you want to try it. All right, we have downloaded that now. I don't want to open Siri. Come on. Here, downloads. There's my downloads folder. Okay. Now in here, it's documents folder. Sorry, downloads. Target training. This is the zip file that you get. And there's also the individual file. So you unpack that. Now we go to upload. Drag and drop the boundary file into here. Okay, and then confirm. Submit. And then as before, so this is now the boundary that we have here, and then basically it is initializing the base model. This is going to take a little bit of time. Sorry, because of the delayed start technical issues, we're just going to go 5 to 10 minutes over. Be more than happy to, you don't have time anymore, then watch the recording a little bit later. And as I said, we're going to release that as part of the documentation. So while this is running, so here running baseline means now, as we had it before, it downloads that local context, it connects to the closest temperature station. It's running this initial analysis of the heat days that we get. And also does your typical land cover classification and so on. Now in this case, this analysis is not that insightful because it is a new development. So it's mostly just agricultural land out there. So we're not going to get some really interesting research with that. But if you go into an existing urban area, you can also get information about your land cover fractions and so on, which is quite interesting to observe that. It's kind of what's your tree cover fraction and impervious areas and all that. So we're doing that. When it's here, when it's usually stuck at 71%, that means target is currently running. It just takes a little bit of time to do that for this area. I want to just jump into the documentation back into that. As you see here, it basically gonna guide you through step by step. So basically first how to set up and create a new scenario. And what we're gonna do now is we wanna see how we can actually create the urban form, and also for some of the other parameters, create the right land cover fractions. It shouldn't take much longer until that result is finished, hopefully. All that is running at the moment in the cloud, and we have quite a few computers sitting on the cloud that we use also for some of the large applications. So we shouldn't have a bottleneck here. Okay. So my bottleneck is more my local computer at the moment. Alrighty, how are we going? If you used the tool previously, it is now way more robust in terms of you can just reload at any point in time and so on. There shouldn't be any issues with that anymore. That might damage your project file, anything like that. So all those issues have disappeared. Okay. So if you get that error message that a project file, does somebody else still get the error message that the project file is too big? So I have upgraded your I've upgraded your website. Previously got the message, the area is too large. Please try and log out. Your access levels 2, 3, so it should be okay. The maximum size comes out of the demo version. If you only have access to the demo version, you can only work with a really small area. This is part of the license. Because to do that, you will need access to the GSK license as well. So this is only for research and for demonstration purposes. Okay, now I'm not going to visualize here. I take those toggles away. The land surface has identified here. You can see the farmhouse and everything. So it is all there. But as I said, that is probably not that relevant. What is interesting though, it is so the first 3 extreme events have been that, and then going down, yeah, so it's quite a list here where we can see then the different events. It's also interesting to see, probably see here the impact of climate change already, that although the time series starts in 1970, we see most of the heat waves have been in the 2010 and onwards. So it's kind of, we can see the frequency of those being a bit higher already. As said, all those elements about pervious, so that identifies obviously it's mostly grassland and not much else out there. Now we want to create now the initial setup for our precinct structure plan. This is in following the nodes that we have here. So we can add a new scenario here. We derive it from the baseline, and then what we call that, this is our initial development. I confirm. Now, for this initial development, we have our, as you see here, now the workflow nodes where we have our panel. And also it shows us some of those graphs still. This is what we're at the moment still working through. What is the best way of presenting that information? If you have suggestions for that, please let us know as well. Or if it's you, or if it's how we can make that more useful. Now let's start. We're gonna start with actually uploading the rest of the data. Now, if you want to upload the data, the rest of the data, there are two ways that you can do that. We have here on the left in the panel, you find the map layers, map filters or maps as well. This is where you find where we can upload and add all that information. So if we click on that plus button, you can either draw areas or, as we have here, upload areas as well. Now I click on that. Two things coming in here. You can upload individual GeoJSON files in that. So basically you drag and drop your files that we had before. Okay, so you drag and drop those files over. Or if you like, you can also zip those files up. I can't do that. It should be one. So you create a zip zip file that contains, you can do that with the folder that we had before. Okay, so we just drag and drop that folder in, and that is gonna bulk upload. So basically extract all the files that we had in there and adding all those files at once to your case studies. As I said, you can upload the individual ones. Just into the residential boundary. Now, we should have the parameters here defined that we have. So let's define that. So we add now the residential nodes under urban form. We find the residential development node. Okay. You need to click on the node. This is when then the parameter set is gonna pop up, and then you populate it with the values before that we had in here. And now my computer is stuck again. So you can just add those parameters and play around with those values. In this case, we say it's 120 for width, the depth. To find maybe a note that we need to update the documentation, it'll be depth. The offset can stay as is. We set the parcel width to 25, the parcel depth to 40 meters. Now what we have changed as well. So we have the building height that it can add here. We have changed the building generation to move away from defining the actual size of the building by adding its length and width to site cover, because that's more a commonly used parameter. So if in your planning guidelines, you're not allowed to have a site cover of 60%. And this is what you can put in now into the model straight. And then the model based on the parcel site would adjust and generate the building accordingly. We then also have the residential units in here. And then add the hardstand fraction. So this means how much of the rest of the freestanding area, also basically of that 40%, how much of that is hardstand. And then we have the last element is the irrigation ratio, or this should be garden fraction here, sorry, 0.4. Okay. Now, you can place the trees. In this case, you can say how many trees, so what's the size of your canopy that you expect here, how many lots are going to get a tree. And here you can start to play with different scenarios. You can say if it's only 25, 50%, 100%, in this case we have 100. And how many trees on lot would you have? So in this case, let's say we start with a scenario where we have 0 trees. If you want to simulate 0 trees, the easiest way to do that is just set the tree spacing to a large number. Okay, that is it. And you need to choose the area that you apply that model to. So in this case, we want to apply that model, this is in highlight as well, to the residential area. And yeah. Now, if you want to define the other fractions as well, it's going to be go again into those nodes. And then there's then the assign fraction node that you can use for that. So this is under land cover. Okay, you find the assign fraction node, and the assign fraction node is a way to directly write parameters onto the land cover field. So for example, here, just show it for our, let's say, commercial area. We have here, we define, so for the commercial area, we can define, we have 0% tree cover, we have no water, the grass fraction is 0.02, 0.08, 0.45, 0 and 0.45. Okay, this will be that, and so on. And then you can do the same method for all the other nodes as well. So it's kind of, I'm not gonna show that now, but if you want to do the full case study, this is how you would add those as well. If you're finished and happy with that, you just gonna press run, and then the scenario is gonna be sent off and running with those parameters as we have it. It takes a little bit of time again to then to develop all of the urban form. So it's now we're doing that parcel subdivision again, adding the individual buildings, adding trees if we have. In this case, we don't have any, and then also adding, updating the land cover information, and then with the next node that we had here, adding the land cover information to that as well. Okay. You can at any point in time, if you're in those scenarios, you can also go back to the overview and then start working on an additional setup as well. So in this case, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a second scenario here. So let's say this will be our business as usual, but we don't have a tree. And now we calculate a green scenario where we start to add a greening scenario as well. Now, there's a bit of a pro tip. If you in this case, you're now adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different assigned fraction nodes, okay? And you're also adding the residential node as well. Now, it might be tedious if you want to do a second case study to do that again, okay? That might be quite repetitive to do that. So what you can do is instead of starting to completely create that scenario from scratch, you can say you want to build your scenario based on the initial development. So in this case, what it would mean, it loads then as base data set the data that have been generated for the initial development, and then you only need to add the residential node again and just then change the number of trees that you have in there. Now this gives you then basically, it just makes it a bit easier. Only caution is that it needs to be, the initial development needs to be finished for that before you can do that. So this is why I'm now creating the greening scenario just quickly from scratch. So to do the same thing again, set up those nodes, urban forms, we said quick canal, residential one. We want to apply that to the residential area in our thing. I actually don't. Let's just activate that here, residential area and case study area, so that we can look at them. Sorry, that was meant to be that. Residential, okay. Block width 120, 25, 25, 40. Building height, site cover is the same, residential unit is the same. Let's have a bit more green space. And just for out of interest, have add the number of trees in here and add trees in for this scenario as well. Okay, now we add the assigned fraction node as well. So this is land cover information, assigned fraction, and we add the commercial area. So this is just so we can compare the results that we're getting. Okay. So we have here 2. Just if you use the assigned fraction, I'll always make sure all the numbers add up to 100%, 0.45. Okay, this is done, and then we run that as well, that scenario. as said before, there's, you can run as many scenarios as you like at the same time. That doesn't have any impact on it. Let's see how that is going. Okay, so the model, so the initial development has finished calculating the urban form and all that, and is running at the moment. Target, which takes a couple of minutes to run for this area. Okay, this one is still running. So while we wait for the results to come in, do you have any questions for now? Okay. So now the initial development has been finished. Let's have a look. So we should see, there's a small glitch in this area. Okay, I want to highlight. Okay, let's have a look at those results again. So we get, I want to stay in the overview. Now, if you want to look at the individual results here, there's the layers tab here, and here you can activate now the results that you want to look at. So in this case, let's say we want to look at the buildings that have been generated. We need to change here then to the initial development, because this is the scenario that we are interested in. Activate that again, and then we should see the initial buildings. In this case, they're designed to cover that at 60% side cover. So the messaging is right. The offsets might not necessarily be correct here. Now let's look at the target result then again. So this would then be getting quite a uniform result, and obviously in those areas, it's roughly the surface temperature is around 43 degrees at its peak. And this is then also what we see with those two lines that we get. Now, just in terms of comparison, it's a bit meaningless to compare it to the baseline in this case because it's a pre-developed state. But we still can see that the development here and changing it to the actual, starting to put that urban form into it, is going to increase the air temperature by up to 4 degrees in some of the areas. So this actually has quite a big impact on that. Okay. And since we don't have any trees in here and so on, the overall temperature is quite high, the overall surface temperature. There's also some other statistics in here that tells you what's the number of people living in here, the number of parcels have been generated. In this case, we added 1,500 buildings as well, and the overall case study area, and so on. And this is the base information that we get here. Now we can also compare, if you're interested in that, you can start to compare the air temperature change to each other. So it's kind of, if you're interested in different air temperatures, you can look into compare the initial development with your baseline, okay, and see what that tells us. Again, it's probably not the most useful comparison here. I need to compare that. Yeah. But that tells us then basically what is the difference of the temperatures to those elements that we get. Okay. Let's go back, deactivate that. You can see and then wait for the final results to be finished. Yeah, so basically all these scenarios set up and the notes and so on should be familiar from the previous version that we had. Now we get a bit of a more interesting insight, hopefully, so we can now start to compare. Let's say here, what's here with our greening scenario, we bring obviously the land surface temperatures going down quite a lot, and we can see also here a smaller impact in terms of the greening scenario. Now, this is one of the elements coming in, that this is now only looking at the this is the average of the overall temperature that we get. If you want to know, for example, what is now happening in a smaller area to really see the difference, there's an option to compare. Let's say you want to, in this area here, understand just in a residential sample, what's the difference in air temperature. Just add that polygon by R1 and then compare it here, for example, to R1. And we hopefully get a bit of a better result. Yeah, now the temperature is much higher. The temperature difference in terms of land surface temperatures, for example, much higher. It went from, let's just compare it to the initial development. So basically went to from 58 to 53 degrees, or from 57 to 53. And then we also see here from the initial development, yeah, there's a 0.2 degree difference that we achieve here by just adding trees. Now, if you want to get to this is not one tree per lot, but if you want to achieve more cooling, you will need to also add, increase your irrigated backyard space, so your green infrastructure that you have in there, and so on. So that there are other elements that you need to add as well. And this is how you can start to explore the results, and also then compare the results to the different timelines that you get. So in this case, it's a bit unfortunate that the baseline is dominating the results a little bit. Okay. Other things that I can test is the impact of dry gas, impact of irrigation, and so on. More trees, yeah, change in urban form on those scenarios. Do you have any questions? If you don't have any further questions, this would be it then for today. Thanks for staying with us until the end. We're gonna cut that video together, take out some of the breaks, and then publish that online as well to have as part of the documentation to give you some insight into that. Okay. Thank you all.